Welcome back to another one of our videos. We're going to take a very brief look at some of the progress that we've made up here along the frame rails, and then we're going to talk about what we're going to be doing about this water line. Now, we've been making a little bit of progress on building these and constructing them. I've mentioned this a couple times, it's quite monotonous, so we're not showing every little piece of wood being built, but we have made quite a lot of progress on building these frame rails. And actually, there's Brandon there right now. Get over here. He's got our hardware. Perfect. That was incredibly good timing. So there we go. We got our hardware that we're going to use on this boat for the frame rails. We got all of our stainless steel fasteners to pop in here later. So that's going to be really nice to get that done and get these fastened down. But again, I'm not going to be doing that until it's all ready to go and I can show you guys the process of getting that all installed. Now, one thing I haven't really addressed yet is this water line. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this, so essentially what this is the manufacturer of the boat determined exactly where the water rests on the side of the boat when it's sitting in water, and so it gives you this water line, so you have an idea of the parts that need to be sealed and the parts that are going to leak if they aren't properly sealed. So as we're doing a new bottom on this boat, it's also necessary that we take a look at the wood back here, because if this is leaking, it will leak into the boat. And if you take a look at the condition of these sealing areas, you'll understand that we definitely need to take these pieces of wood off of here and fix the underlying issues with them. Now, they do have lots of old sealant in here that's just kind of gummy at this point. And of course, you have oil staining and oil saturation into the keel and various other pieces of the wood here. So that all has to be addressed. So we're going to cover a little bit of a breakdown on what we're going to do with that as well. So to address that, you've probably figured it out at this point. We are going to be using our good old-fashioned Forstner bit, and we're going to be taking the plugs out of the back of this to remove this transom plank right back here. Now, the reason we're doing this, a couple of different reasons. First of all, in the design of it, I want to eliminate the single exhaust and move it to a dual exhaust. So we're going to be putting them here and here to come sticking out the back. I just think that looks nicer. And then also in the grand course of things, I want to paint the back of this completely white and have a really big mural on the back that Cue Ball is going to do for us. But I thought that would also look kind of cool. I haven't really seen that before, completely painted transom. So I don't know, I think that'd be kind of neat to do for our hot rodding stuff and make it look like kind of custom and cool, as well as the obvious fact that this will be leaking, and it is one of the soak bottoms. So this would have to sit in a body of water if it was properly done for any length of time. Could be up to a week before these planks expand and seal up these areas. Now, just because this section here is above the water line, that does not mean that it won't cause water to come into it. If you have a bunch of people in this thing, or if you're pulling someone in a tube or a skis, whatever, which we do plan on doing, you're going to be pulling the back of this boat down into the water, so the chance of water getting in here is quite high. So it's important that we get this area sealed and safe so that we don't have any issues. And on top of that, I'd also like to do a modern bottom on this part. So when we're talking about modern bottoms, it's not only in reference to the actual bottom of the boat, but it can also apply to the water line and the first plank area here. So in order to do that, we're gonna do what we're doing on that gravette, which I covered in last video. If you guys haven't seen that, that was one of my favorite videos personally. I think there's quite a lot of information in there, so that was kind of a fun one to make. But the gravette that we're working on, we are putting pieces of marine plywood and then applying 5200 onto the surface and then putting the plank on. So it is a modern bottom, but it will look like an old one. So yeah, that's the plan, and let's start taking this plank off, and I'll show you guys the little bits that we're gonna do as we go. So now we're going to be moving on to getting these planks off. These are all Robertson because someone has in the past replaced these planks. So thankfully I don't have to break out the flathead bit. That's not really a lot of fun. It walks everywhere. But we got the Robertson bit going, so yeah, let's start peeling this plank off. Now a lot of these Robertson, or as our American friends call them there, square drives, are not really properly installed on here. They're super deep, they're super high up, they're off from the plug. So a couple of little tricks here. First of all, get an awl, just this little pointy guy. Clean out the area. Most importantly, clean out the inside of the screw so your bit actually goes in there. And then a lot of these, unfortunately, are spinning due to, you know, the rot in the wood, or perhaps they were put in incorrectly. So what you can do is, keep in mind we're not trying to salvage this plank necessarily, so it's okay if I ding it up a little bit. But get a little flat blade and try to assist it out if possible. It's a bit of a fight, but that's what we're gonna try. So here's another really fun thing that they did. I've been fighting with this for the last 10 minutes. So there's this Robertson that was stuck deep inside the wood. And I was digging it out and I put my bit on there and it's spinning and I'm like, what is happening? And then I realized they put the regular size Robertson there, and then they put a slightly smaller one so that my bit was spinning in it. Always these tiny little things that just give you a headache. Look at that. And this is the only one that I have found in this entire rear transom. So thanks to whoever put that there. Now I got most of the fasteners removed. Some of them are just kind of hung up in there, but they're just spinning on the top. So I think it's just the head of them. So what I'm gonna do is very carefully start to remove this and identify what's holding it back. The most important thing to keep in mind when you are removing these transom planks to replace one, whether it's this piece or this one, whatever it is, make sure that you keep this edge on this plank as intact as possible. You really do not want to mess this edge up because it will change, you know, the height of the planks. It can cause some issues down the road. So make sure when you are prying this off, you're not wedging anything into this, and you're being very careful with it. If necessary, it may require you to take one of those little flush cut saws and come up here and just very gently cut away any sealant. But again, do not pry in these little cracks to get this plank off, because you will damage this wood. And then in turn, you're gonna have to replace this one and so on and so forth. So if you're just doing one piece of wood on the back of the transom, be very careful removing it so you don't damage this one. Not really concerned with this piece in and of itself, because I can always make a new template for this piece of wood. Be nice to have it in one piece, but again, just really be mindful of what you're doing when you disassemble it. Now, to accomplish this, I'm going to be using this little pry bar. It's got some flexibility, but not a lot, and it's got some sharp edges, so I can get in there and slowly start peeling this away from the surface that it's resting up against. Now, there is heaps of 5200 in between this plank and the frame supports here, so I'm gonna be very careful and just really take my time as I pry on this, try not to damage, you know, this plank or this plank. Yeah, and that's what we're gonna do. For those of you wondering about the side planks here, I kind of assessed them and I looked at it. It's not the worst. They're not super terrible. They're not really bad. The worst of it is this area here. But the one nice thing that we have when working under water lines, so anything here, is that this is a painted area. So any sort of repair that can be done on here can be a little bit more extreme than the side, due to the fact that we can cover it with paint after, essentially. Now, if this was a show boat, obviously that wouldn't be a good thing to do. You want to replace the panel. But seeing as this is just a little junky boat, and again, I'm just giving you guys a tutorial on how to fix up junky little boats like this, make sure, you know, we can replace big sections of wood, we can epoxy stuff, and then we can paint it. So you'll never even notice it was done. Now with show boats, you wouldn't want to do that, or anything that's supposed to be kind of a higher caliber build. You would want to make sure that you're replacing the wood, but this little beater boat, I'm not going to be concerned with filling this in with some epoxy in areas or putting in little replacement pieces, because again, we can just sand it smooth and paint it. So yeah, moving on, we'll get this off now. So now we got it started here. You can see I have this edge ready to go. The board did give out a little bit right here. There's a bit of a splinter, but if I manage to pull it off up to here, I should be fine. You'll see quite a lot of sealant back here. Personally, with this boat, I'm not super concerned about damaging this edge, you know, a little bit. The surface isn't going to be exactly the way it is now. It's just a really slow and tedious process of carefully removing this, and never putting any pressure on the bottom area. It looks like I may have to maybe take like a little knife, little razor blade, and maybe just work my way under here to separate some of this, because there is still quite a bit of caulking holding it in place. That seems to be where most of the tension is coming from, so that's what I'm going to do now. Now, in case you're wondering why I have a claw hammer, I'm just using it to hold open, not necessarily, maybe a little bit of force, but I'm not in there just digging away at the wood. I'm just trying to create a bit of an open space, and then once I get access to the sealant, I can just slice it like this. And also at the same time, I'm looking for any fasteners that are holding us up. So this one is initially spinning. It's now holding us up from progressing. So I'm going to see if I can't undo it now. Now that's under a little bit of tension, it might come out. No, it's still spinning. So it's going to pry a little bit on the head of that screw, see if I can get it to come out a little bit farther here. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So it's not doing anything. Okay. Okay, that wasn't doing anything. I have one more right here. Also, probably not doing anything. Okay. All right, well, moving on. We're going to keep prying on it and see what we get. Now, don't panic if it starts to crack. That's totally fine. As long as we can piece it together, just get a template. Not super concerned with it, but as we go here, get yourself, we call these olfas, one of these, and just start very carefully attempting to cut away that sealant that is in there. Again, try not to cause any damage to the actual sealing surface on this boat, but you can see, look at that. That's all sealant that is holding up the wood from moving on to the next step. So very carefully cut this, and we should be able to keep going. So it appears that this part is broken here. Well, it doesn't appear, it broke. But that's totally fine. Like I said, we can template out a new shape, or we can put this back together to, you know, somewhat establish what the shape is going to be. We're going to have to cut it down anyways, but a little bit unfortunate. Would have liked to have shown you guys a complete piece of wood, but it is what it is. Let's keep moving on. So there we go. We got the plank, the rear transom plank taken off. Of course, there's a lot of leftover residuals. We have tons of 5200. There's lots of little wood splinters. And the transom plank was on there really strong up against this point, which is good. That means that there is good sealing on the planks to the battens. So the backs of these are nice and tight. You can see it left behind a lot of wood. Now, the boat made it, and this edge here is really nice. There was no prying done to it, so we have a nice crisp, clean edge that we can polish up a little bit to make nice and smooth. So that's the important part, but the transom plank did not make it. There was still quite a bit of tension on that 5200, so it is what it is. Keep in mind, when we build a new one, we're going to be taking our piece of wood, putting it down in here, lining it up, and then marking out where we need it to be, so it's all at the correct height. So yeah, it'll be nice to kind of dial everything in and get it where we want it. Also, I don't know if you noticed too, the plank here was staying kind of proud, so this was actually going behind the plank. So just getting these corners lined up, getting everything nice and square, it'll be really, really wonderful once it's all done. So next step is we're going to be cleaning this off and getting it prepped for the new piece of wood that will be going onto it. Now you may have noticed in that time lapse there that the tools I mainly used were just this Olfa knife as well as this little pry bar piece. And the reason for that is now I'm going to move on to using a chisel. The reason I didn't use a chisel beforehand is because this is kind of a blunt little piece here. So by getting it in between the pieces of wood, it's really only going to split the 5200 and the wood apart. It's not going to dig in to the batten. So that's kind of what I wanted to avoid, was this residual wood that's heavily adhered to this batten. I didn't want to get a chisel out and accidentally carve away chunks of the batten. So getting it really close like this, using this blunt little tool here, is a great way to get started. And then using this Olfa knife to just cut away any of this silicone is another really nice thing to do, because again, I don't want to be cutting away parts of the batten, and it's kind of hard to do with a little razor blade. I mean, it's you can do it, but you're not going to cut away a big portion like you would with a chisel. So now that I can kind of see what's going on and where the batten starts, I will then bring out the chisel and start cleaning it all up, because I can visually see where I shouldn't be digging and where I should. And then once that's done, we'll get out the planer and the sander. Yeah, get this all cleaned up. So let's move on forward to the next part. Now, I've never been one personally to gatekeep any sort of trade secrets. I believe that the more people that know how to do things correct, the more work there will be, because the work will be nicer and just helps everyone get along. So I'm going to teach you guys one of the little tricks that we use here to clean this surface up really fast. The reason this is so tricky is because this silicone is really gooey and rubbery. So if you were to just put a sander on here, what's going to end up happening is it's going to get stuck on the silicone and it's going to burn the wood around it. So you'll find you'll be taking off lots of wood, but the silicone won't really go anywhere. Now again, that all depends on what type of sanding unit you're using, but for the most part, that's fairly accurate. So a good trick to get all the silicone off of here with a power tool is by using the flush cut saw. Now specifically using a blade that is missing the teeth and has an edge to it. Isn't the best edge in the world. I just quickly threw it on the belt sander, but having an edge like this, it becomes a really powerful tool that I can then use to flush cut all of the silicone off of this transom. So there you can see what that flush cut saw is able to do. It's almost like giving it a haircut. It just really sands that silicone down really nice and gets it nice and smooth. So when you do go to sand this, the chances of the silicone causing the wood to only be sanded go down by quite a lot. You're not going to be stuck and hung up on a little piece like this, just kind of taking all the impact of that sanding disc. Now I will mention you can cut into the wood when doing this. So just be careful that when you are doing it, you're not going like this at it. Keep it nice and flat and flush, and you just kind of go along and shave it off. So I'm going to do that to the rest of this transom here, and then I can begin sanding and planing everything. So there we go, we got the silicone mostly removed. Of course, you know, the wood isn't perfect, and there is little pieces sticking up like this in certain areas. But like I said earlier, we're going to be taking a little bit off of here and recessing this, because we are going to be putting that marine plywood on. So I'm not super concerned with little areas like that, because we are going to be flattening this out. And then as for this edge, I cleaned this up a little bit too, but you can see how nice and straight that is. That'll make a really nice ceiling surface. Yeah, this will look really nice. Another thing too, once this is done and in place, I'm going to be sanding the entire back of this, filling in these gaps with epoxy, and then putting on the layers of paint to cover all that up. So that'll be quite nice too, something to look forward to. But so I have the surface lightly sanded and prepped for the final step here. Now the final thing I want to do is I want to take off just a little bit of material. So I'm going to get my plane like this, just a simple little plane here. I'm going to put it on here, and I'm going to go over the same area, you know, of course I'll do the whole length of it about 3 or 4 times, and together that adds up to about 1 mil. And once that's done across the whole surface, I'm good to go. The one thing to be cautious of is look for any metal or any little screws that are broken, and make sure you're not gonna chip or damage your plane. So it would be good to just go around and double check that you get all of the tiny little fasteners out of here. And then once that's cleaned up, it's just a matter of sealing this all with epoxy, getting it all nice and sturdy, and fixing everything up. As for the oil soaking, you can see some of that saturation. It's not terrible on here. It's definitely the worst on the keel, but we're not going to be replacing the keel on this. That'd be too much for this little boat, so we're just going to stick with what we got here. So yeah, that'll be coming up in a future video though. I'm going to carry on in replacement of this. So next video, I'm going to set up the mahogany plank, get everything done with that. And so next video, I'm going to set up the mahogany plank, get it all laid in there, get everything sanded and set up to be installed. So yeah, stay tuned, and thanks so much for watching the video today, guys. Really appreciate all the support we've gotten, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. It's free. It helps us out a whole bunch. So thanks again for watching our video. Have a good day.